Hey everyone, my name is Manly Mouse Dan. I am the sole developer for Memoirs of a Battle Brothel, which is one of those crazy 40-hour long RPGs. I honestly believe it to be the work of some kind of cocaine binge, which is a bit upsetting as I made it and I don't remember any kind of fun drug-fueled insomnia, just a fair amount of carpal tunnel. So Memoirs is a turn-based game with adult-rated sexual content. Now, to get this out of the way, I'm not going to cover any of the more not safe for work stuff, as that would probably cause my videos to get deleted off YouTube. In fact, I'll probably have to skip past some scenes too. I apologize ahead of time if the audio is weird or if my dogs are destroying a house in the background. I'm not a YouTuber or streamer by any means, and this is probably the first time in years that I've recorded my voice. There's a short intro here which acts as a bit of a prologue, but we'll skip that for now. I think I'll be treating this video series as a bit of a developer's commentary, rather than a comprehensive walkthrough with pauses so you can read a story. I think an RPG like this is best experienced by playing it. There's also a lore introduction here, which gives you some more information about the world. So Memoirs starts off like any good RPG with character creation. Unlike most other good RPGs, however, you'll probably notice right away a distinct lack of polish and general good design when it comes to UI. That's my bad. The only tools I have in my dev kit are usually the pour hammer and the make it work hammer. But anyways, there is a dense number of mechanics and choices right at the start of the game, and I feel like giving players impactful choices is always the best way to start off a RPG. In character creation, you'll of course choose your anatomy, character appearance, combat class, background, faction bonuses, attribute bonuses, and other things. Your background is the history of your character, and will provide some slight bonuses, as well as give unique dialogue throughout the game. Sometimes, rarely, they'll also open up new options for you too, like how guild characters will treat the player a little bit differently if they were a former courtesan themselves, or the former cultist knowing a little bit more about magical lore. Starting faction bonus isn't too important, as it's only a really small bump that will give you a few more extra options in early game. There are 8 factions in the game, including 4 major factions, 2 guild factions, and 2 minor factions. The major factions are the ones with full faction quest chains. Among these are the Stormbreakers, who are these straightforward mercenaries that have a bit of an ulterior motive. That's the thing about factions and Memoirs. Everybody has ulterior motives, and there's not really any good guys, but plenty of bad guys. The city where all this takes place, the city-state of Moonfall, is very much a classic cyberpunk dystopia. Anyways, next up is the Iron Cartel, one of the city's major crime syndicates. Then there's the Old Watch, a vigilante organization, like if a bunch of psychotic Batmen were running around. Last up is the Traveler's Mandate, which is basically an alternate universe version of the SCP Foundation, but nicer, and probably worse. The 2 guild factions are the Progressives and the Traditionalists. They argue over how the guild should be run. And to preempt any questions, no, these factions are not a commentary on American politics or anywhere else. This is entirely a work of fiction. But the conflict between the guild factions is actually relatively interesting because it's ultimately one of municipal law. Highly interesting stuff, I know. They're essentially fighting over whether or not the Courtesans Guild, which, yes, is a guild full of hookers, should be regulating the sex trade for the entire city, which, if they did, would put them into conflict with the crime syndicates. Anyways, you'll learn more about them later. The last 2 factions are the Cult of the 3 Moons, the largest of the magic-worshipping cults in the city, and the Board, a shadowy cabal that actually rules the hyper-capitalist, hyper-individualist city of Moonfall. Now, these factions are only considered minor in that you actually have very little interaction with them. They are obviously very influential. The next major choice we move on to is the combat class. I know this is a lot of choices to thrust onto a player, so if you're new, I would really just suggest going with what sounds good to you. The game is dense, both in story and in mechanics, so I actually compiled all the text documents that I had for this project, and the word count came out to around 100,000 words and over 450 pages, which is something roughly on par with J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. But of course not all that text actually went into the game. Plenty were just planning and brainstorming for mechanics and whatnot. It's probably not as well written either. But yeah, classes. There's 4 base classes with 3 specializations each, so that's 12 total. The base classes are the Shaper, which is your magic user, a Soldier, which is a more straightforward, tankier class. There's the Support, which is a healer slash buffer, debuffer, and the Vigilante, which is a very roguish hit and run class. They all have specializations that make them do a bunch of different things, including being good at melee combat or ranged combat, or summoning drones to shoot your enemies, or being a magic kung fu monk. There's that too. Did I mention this game is heavily inspired by Shadowrun in some ways? I do love that combination of cyberpunk and fantasy, although here it's probably a little bit more Lovecraftian. Any of the 4 classes should be viable, although I should probably stress that balance is not something I place a high priority on. I do want players to experiment and maybe find out what works for them and what doesn't. There are classes that do certain things way better, and if you want to run a hard-hitting party of 5 battle mages that stun lock everything in the game and sets half of the environments on fire, you probably can. And if that's fun for you, go right on ahead. Anyways, most of the choices you make in character creation can be reversed later on in a shop in the starting area of the city. You can also change the classes of your companions there too. You can also choose an attribute bonus here. Attributes in the game are perception, athletics, charisma, and technology. There will be attribute checks in the game that open up new options and dialogue to you if you have a high enough level. Additionally, attributes will come into play when dealing with the overworld contracts. Alright, I think I will end the video here, and if I have time, continue with a part 2 of actual gameplay. Alright, I'll catch you all later.